Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of big data. Today, my guest is from Canara. We have the CEO of the company, Tom Barton. Tom, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Rich. Happy to do this with you.
Well, thanks for coming on. You know, I had not heard of Canara. I kind of went through your materials here, but I thought we'd just go through your slide deck and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. Does that sound good?
Okay, that sounds great. All right, why don't we go ahead to slide 2, which just kind of provides a summary of kind of at the top level what we do. So what we do is we deploy, monitor, and maintain critical backup power systems. And the value proposition that we offer our customers is really to maximize the life of their assets and to preserve uptime and avoid outages. And I think as we go through it, there is a real tie to big data because we have a ton of data points. We collect a lot of information. We have sensors that we deploy in our customers, and we use that data to develop algorithms and predictive analytics to let our customers know what to do ahead of time to maximize uptime and asset life. So just moving on to page 3, talking a little bit about backup power systems. For those that are not familiar with how data center power systems operate, it's pretty simple, and we'll kind of walk through it at the high level. So, in the event, I'm looking at the upper right part of the third slide here. In the event that utility power fails, then backup power systems need to come into place. And basically, there are some systems that sense whether there's a degradation or a failure in utility power systems. And if there is, what they do is they actually transfer the load to UPS systems. And those UPS systems actually are, by and large, backed up with large banks of batteries. Many people don't necessarily know it, but there's literally hundreds of batteries that look just like car batteries that are backing it up. And basically those car batteries have to support the load for the entire data system during the period of time between when the utility power fails and then, jump into point 3 on this slide when they can start up the diesel generators. So that's pretty much what happens, and those power systems and the batteries are designed to run for 5 to 10 minutes to give time to the generators to start up and adequately handle the load. So ideally, per point 4 there, the servers never lose power as long as your backup power systems are in good order, as long as your UPS systems work, as long as your batteries work, and as long as your generators start, then your servers never lose power. So let me move on to slide 4, which is the Canara slide in the upper left. Talks a little bit about PG&E. And this kind of encapsulates some of our new messaging and why we decided to rebrand the company. So the company historically has been known for battery monitoring. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But really we've been doing a much broader range of products and services, and that's why we decided to change the name from IntelliBat to Canara. IntelliBat we thought was just a little bit too focused on just the battery component, but as I mentioned, we're doing more. So, looking at that kind of gray bar, horizontal bar towards the bottom middle part, we're doing 3 things. One is we're actually selling the critical power systems, so we're doing end-to-end deployments of the complete backup power systems. And I'll talk, in a few slides, I'll talk a little bit more in detail what that means. The second thing that we're doing is we're doing monitoring of those systems because, those backup power systems are only as good as the weakest link, and you need to continually sort of monitor what's going on to ensure that when it's time, to call on those backup power systems, if there's a hurricane, if the utility power drops, et cetera, you need to make sure that those backup power systems are going to work. And then the third element there, critical power services, is really just all of the installation and maintenance services that we put around our offering. And you can see, for example, on this slide that PG&E relies on us. That's absolutely true. PG&E has been a long-term customer. We support them in a number of different ways. Some of the key stats on the bottom, over the course of our history as a company, we've actually monitored over 1 million batteries. We are currently monitoring over 264,000 batteries with 2,300 UPS systems. And parts of our company have actually been in existence for over 20 years, and we've had 100% uptime, meaning none of our customers who are on our monitoring service have ever experienced a UPS-related load loss. So that's a pretty good track record. Just one more comment in terms of why we picked Canara. It's really a play on canary in a coal mine. So, our philosophy as a company is to put sensors and devices out in the data center that help us predict the problem. And we want to be the guys that actually help you figure out that there's a problem before it occurs. So we don't want to report on problems in real time. We actually want to tell you a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time, 4 weeks ahead of time that something needs to be done to maintain your infrastructure so that you never go down. So that's the genesis of the word. We wanted to go with Canara as opposed to canary because, canary is kind of a generic word. You can't own the trademark rights, et cetera. So, we own the Canara branding, and we launched it in conjunction with 7x24 at the show in Boca Raton in early June. And so far, the reaction from the industry is pretty good. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is slide 5. The heading is History in UPS and Battery Monitoring. And this is really the core of the company, and I think what the company is best known for, particularly when it was branded as IntelliBat. And parts of that company, specifically, the part that was known as DPMC, have actually been around for 20 years. As I mentioned, we've monitored over 1.2 million batteries. We actually have, speaking of big data, the largest empirical database of actual battery performance, which is a 1.5 billion data points and growing. And we do have our own market-leading proprietary battery monitoring hardware. I think, one of the things that really separates us from some of the other guys in the industry is that we couple our monitoring hardware with a cloud-based offering and our monitoring operations center, which takes a look at all that data and has both kind of machine algorithms in the loop as well as humans in the loop to work with our customers to, help them, do different things to maintain uptime. And I'll show a couple case examples in a few slides that will sort of give you a little bit more specifics on that, but it's really sort of making sure that we don't sell the customer hardware and walk away. We continue to monitor what's going on. We look at the data, and we work on a daily and a weekly basis with our customers to take every action necessary to maximize the life of their assets and make sure they never have a downtime event. Last point that I'll mention on this slide is a lot of our customers are very large companies like Savvis and Equinix and Digital Realty, and many of them have grown through acquisition. Many of them have, a lot of different types of UPS systems and vendors in the mix. Sometimes competitor battery monitoring hardware is part of that. And so, we're the only guys that actually have kind of an open systems platform where we will attach our monitoring and analytics and services to any vendor's hardware. You can certainly select the hardware from us, but if you happen to have a legacy install base from somebody else, we're not going to tell you to rip it out. We'll actually just attach to that and take whatever data we can get. Moving on to the next slide, which is slide 6, a little bit about the recapitalization. So my business partner, Todd Ford, and I are actually co-CEOs. We came into the company in conjunction with an equity financing round that we closed at the end of June last year. It was a $22 million round led by a company called Columbia Capital, which has a very long and successful history in both data centers and telecom. Columbia is actually the largest investor in Zayo and Zcolo. They're investors in a company called Cologix. They're investors in a cloud services company called VirtuStream. So they really know the space very well. And they actually brought the opportunity to us. And, collectively, with the founders, with Columbia Capital, with Todd and myself, we closed on a round at the end of June last year. We also brought in a little bit of money from a group called CDC Capital, which is one of the leading investors that's active in the data center space in China. And we think that China is going to be a very important market going forward. I would also say that our investor group is pretty well capitalized. We think that there's a big platform play here, which is it's not just about battery monitoring and the history of the company. It's about this kind of expanded vision that I started to touch on. And so, in addition to growing organically, we believe that there's going to be some opportunities to expand by acquiring companies that are in, our current space, as well as some tangential spaces that we want to touch upon. Second dot point there on our expanded focus, as I mentioned, I think the core of the company was in battery monitoring, but now, like I said, we're really doing 3 things. One is deploying the complete power systems, expanding the range of monitoring, and doing complete installation and maintenance services. The next slide, which is slide 7, talks about our global presence. You can see, some of the metrics here in terms of the number of batteries and systems, sites and cities that we're in. And the thing I guess I would mention here is company started out with a focus on North America, not surprisingly, but some of our larger customers like the Equinixes, Savises, and Digital Realties of the world, they've got, global deployments, and so they kind of pulled us overseas. And so we're already present from a deployment standpoint in a lot of different geographies around the world. And one of the things that we've done with our capital is actually begin to build sales offices in those geographies. So we hired our Vice President of EMEA, David Joshua. He's been with us for about 6 months, and he is now calling on sort of net new customers into Europe, India, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, regions. And then we actually just closed within the last week on our Vice President of China, who's going to begin calling on opportunities in China, Hong Kong, actually Taiwan, and Singapore, in addition to a couple of other APAC-type geographies like Malaysia. So we're, very excited by the opportunity of not just following our current customers, but calling on net new customers in other geographies. So slide 8, moving along, is really just a summary of kind of why we're excited. And it boils down to, 3 things that we think are great about the opportunity. The first is just, growing markets, and everybody knows that a rising tide kind of lifts all boats, which is there are huge markets, and they're all growing for backup power systems, not just in our core markets of data centers, but also in things like telecom and utilities and oil and gas. Second point I think I would make is that we don't see anybody else in the industry that is really using empirical data and predictive analytics to guide their decision making and, to try and deliver increased uptime and reliability and asset life. So if you look at kind of moving towards the third point here, the market for backup power systems is somewhat dominated globally by big electrical conglomerates like Emerson and ABB and Siemens and so forth, and Eaton. But really, they're selling equipment. They're actually not today in the business of collecting data and developing predictive analytics to help customers with their decision making and so forth. And so we believe that we're actually the only independent company that's vendor neutral. So we certainly do have some preferred vendors, but we base those relationships based on data. And so we would say that it's all about kind of best of breed. We pick our vendors according to actual performance and so forth. And so, to a large extent, we're kind of independent from some of the larger guys out there. And, right now we just don't see any national footprint, let alone global footprint players that are trying to do what we do. And as I mentioned, I think even the big players are not really bringing data and analytics to bear. So we're fairly excited by the overall opportunity. So just moving along to slide 9, some of our customers. Obviously, I think you can see that a lot of them are sort of data center oriented. That's certainly in our wheelhouse. I would say that the 4 on the bottom of the slide, CSC, Digital Realty, Equinix, Savis, are some of our larger customers. So, basically some of the largest and best known and most well-respected names in the industry have decided to standardize on our technology from the standpoint of both implementation of our hardware as well as implementation of our service. So it's really gone well for us in that regard. So in addition to some of those core multi-tenant data center customers, we also have a lot of enterprise data center customers, folks like Charles Schwab and Fidelity. We're moving into, some other enterprise areas. You can certainly see Barclays and Walmart and FedEx and so forth. So, a lot of good name brand companies that are really the core of our current customer base. So now I'm going to move along to slide 10, just a case study, which I think gives a good sense for kind of the scope of some of the things we can do. This is one of our larger multi-tenant data center customers. On the left side, it gives you a sense of the scale. It's over 60,000 batteries that we're monitoring. It's 414 UPS systems, almost all of their battery inventory in many locations globally. And on the right side, you can see the kind of things that we find when we go and implement our technology and services. So we found, many hundreds of bad batteries that needed to be replaced. we managed a ton of warranty claims. And one of the things that's perhaps not well known is that, when you go to a battery vendor and with a warranty claim is one of the first things they'll ask you is, well, did you maintain the right float voltage? Did you maintain the right temperatures? Did you treat the battery properly? And because of our system and the fact that it takes 4 data points a day and we log all of that data, invariably when we present a warranty claim to the battery vendors that we work with, we actually typically easily facilitate that and get it paid, with no problems. The next few points kind of show some of the other things that we do and really kind of dramatize how we work operationally with our customers. So, on a daily and weekly basis, we'll notice things about the batteries. Are they in the right temperature? Are the bus voltages right? Is something going on with the UPS system? So, importantly, one of the things that our technology does is actually monitors AC ripple current, which is something that can be very damaging to batteries and is also indicative of potential failures on the UPS system. And so oftentimes, even if the UPS system isn't technically an alarm, we will notice that things are starting to come out of spec, and we'll let the customer know. And, in this particular instance, we found over 4 UPS systems that had failing DC capacitors and SCR boards. And these are the kind of failures that can literally cause a physical explosion in the case of DC capacitors. And, typically we'll actually bring that system down and make it unavailable in the event that utility power fails. So, last point here is, we're all about predictive analytics, as I mentioned. Instead of trying to handle emergencies as they occur, what we want to do is monitor the systems and take the actions that are required to prevent emergencies in the first place. So for this customer, actually 20% of their emergency service calls were bad batteries, and we moved that from 20% to 0%. So next slide is another case study. I'll just touch on it very briefly, probably not as much detail as I did on the prior one. One of our customers is Cologix. They're a leading multi-tenant data center company that has outstanding connectivity in all of their data centers in Canada and in the United States. And they asked us to sort of prepare for Hurricane Sandy. They knew it was coming. So we checked status even on some, very newly installed equipment, and we actually found, some problems. We found a bad DC plant battery, and we found that a battery that was just 3 weeks old on the generator side was bad. And so we replaced it ahead of time. And, it's not atypical. I mean, batteries are an old technology. Surprisingly, lead acid battery technology hasn't really improved significantly over the last 50 plus years. And it's, often the case that even from a top quality vendor, you can get a battery that just isn't up to snuff. And so we were able to find those out and make sure that their infrastructure was capable of supporting the backup power systems in the event that utility failed. So Cologix was very happy we were able to find that, and they did not have a downtime event. So the next 3 slides just go into a little bit more detail on the 3 legs of the offering that I talked about: power systems and monitoring and services. And I'm now on slide 12 and just going to cover a little bit more detail on our critical power system. So what we found when we started working with a lot of our customers was, in addition to working on the battery subsystems and battery monitoring, they were looking to us for expertise on the complete kind of end-to-end deployment. And over the course of the last kind of 1 to 2 years, we looked at the market and found that there were some extremely high-quality, high-efficiency UPS systems available from new vendors like Toshiba. And so we decided to go to market leading with the Toshiba UPS systems and the rest of our offering to deliver complete power systems in situations where it's either a new build for a data center or they're looking to replace legacy, less efficient UPS systems with something that will deliver, much better efficiency and much better OpEx benefits. We also tend to lead with East Penn batteries. As I mentioned, we have a 20-year database of battery performance, and empirically, East Penn batteries perform better than other vendors that we've worked with. We have our own line of battery cabinets, and we're now also speccing in switchgear and power distribution units. So kind of the end-to-end system. There's a few other areas we may add. In some parts of the world, we may bring in other UPS vendors. We're looking at situations where a customer might want a more cost-effective battery, depending on what they're trying to do. As I mentioned, East Penn we believe has the highest quality in the industry, but for some applications and some customers, they may not be willing to pay for that quality. And we're looking, at all times to sort of drive out the cost of a lot of what we're doing. Last but not least, we're beginning to put our toe in the water more on the generator side. Today, we already monitor genset batteries, but we want to monitor more on the generator side. And at some point, we may actually begin to sell the generator part of backup power systems as well. So moving on to the next slide, slide 13, entitled Critical Power Monitoring. This is really just an illustration of the full range of the things that we're monitoring. Kind of starting from 12 o'clock DC plant battery monitoring. There's applications in most data centers that are 48 volt. There's also applications that are full, UPS system, meaning more 480 volt. We actually do it all, so we monitor, every type of battery application in the data center for DC plant battery monitoring and AC as well. On the branch circuit monitoring, we just announced that at 7x24, so we're now beginning to monitor individual circuits, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in further slides here. We monitor switchgear, we monitor the genset start battery monitoring. A lot of people don't know it, but the number one reason why a generator fails is a bad start battery, and very often those generator batteries are subject to harsher environmental conditions, and so they actually need to be monitored more carefully than inside plant. UPS battery monitoring is really the wheelhouse of the company. And then looking at the two areas that are underneath the word considering, there's a couple of other things that we think are potentially important to monitor. In fact, we know they're important to monitor. Our customers are asking us about them. One is thermal monitoring. And this is done typically today via manual effort. So somebody will walk around with an infrared scanning gun and look for areas in the data center for critical power joints where there might be heat buildup. And heat buildup is indicative that there is a faulty joint, that there's too much resistance. And one of the things that can happen in high voltage applications is that the heat and resistance builds to the point where an explosive event called an arc flash event occurs, which invariably brings down the power system, and if there's a human being in the nearby vicinity, can cause loss of life. So a lot of customers actually don't want to rely on manual thermal scans. What they want to do is implement technology that lets them look continuously at potential heat buildup and warn them in the event that dangerous heat buildup occurs. So that's an area of focus for our R&D team right now. And then secondarily, we also want to move from beyond just generator monitoring, generator start battery monitoring, to monitoring other aspects of the generator to make sure that they're reliable. And that's everything from fuel levels and oil levels to things like making sure that the engine block heater is on during cold winter months and cold geographies. Anything that's necessary to make sure that the generator is going to start when you want it to and perform properly. A couple other points to mention here. We always provide local access to our data, so our customers have local access to the battery monitoring system, but looking now towards the lower left of this slide, we are the only company in the industry that actually has a cloud-based service and a monitoring operations center that lets customers and ourselves just log into a typical web browser, and with the appropriate authentication, they can get alerts, they can look at every piece of data, they can look at any particular battery, they can look at a UPS string. Every piece of data that we record is available through a SaaS cloud-based offering. So I'm now going to move on to slide 14, which is critical power services. We currently offer, everything, I would say, in the area of batteries. So we do battery installation, we do load testing, we make sure that we properly commission battery strings, we do battery preventative maintenance, we do removal and disposal services, and we do some UPS maintenance services. There's a couple areas that we're considering expansions in our service offerings. We want to increase the number of UPS maintenance services that we offer. Basically, we want to have comprehensive multi-vendor UPS maintenance capability. And that's an area, as I mentioned, we've earmarked some capital for acquisition and expansion. And I believe the right way to move forward there is identify one or more top flight companies in North America and possibly other parts of the world that will give us, expanded capability to do multi-vendor UPS maintenance. And then the second area is generator maintenance. A lot of that is covered by some of the major generator vendors out there, but there's an interesting market of regional players there, and we think it could make sense to develop a branded North American offering for generator maintenance. Next couple of slides I'm going to go into, I'm going to kind of skip over the header slide, which is slide 15, and move to slide 16, which is branch circuit monitoring. And this is a new announcement, or a relatively new announcement for the company. This is something that we developed ourselves with our own engineers. And really, what this is all about is a lot of our customers, our multi-tenant data center customers, and even some of the enterprise data center customers, they actually don't have visibility down to the circuit level. So they might sell a customer a 30-amp circuit, and they certainly have a circuit breaker, such that if the customer tries to, consume more power than 30 amps, it's going to trigger the breaker. But they typically haven't had very much visibility as to whether that customer is actually using 10 amps, 20 amps, or 25 amps. And so, they would really like to have that visibility from both a sales standpoint, meaning, if you're bumping up against the edge of what you've contracted for, the sales force wants to call on the customer and sell more circuits. But they also want it from the standpoint of maximizing and sort of optimizing how they lay out their power in the data center. So they want to know if they need to add more UPS systems. They want to know if they need to add more power distribution capability, et cetera. So, there are companies out in the market like Veris and PDI that offer branch circuit monitoring, but a lot of our customers, particularly our largest customers, have said that those offerings are just too expensive. So they asked us to go design a product that would be kind of a market-leading product from the standpoint of products of sort of features and benefits, but would be a fraction of the cost of some of the existing products in the market. And we believe that we've actually been able to do that. So we launched our branch circuit monitoring product. We've been betaing it for a while. Our customers are very happy with it, and we believe that we now have something that's market-leading, but substantially more cost-effective than any other product on the market. The next page, page 17, which is our UI and reporting. I mentioned that we have our cloud-based service offering where any customer can log in over the internet and a web browser and get access to reporting. We just wanted to continue the process of improving the functionality of those reports, making sure that there was tailored reports to information that a particular site manager wants to see, information that regional managers want to see, and then information that top executives want to see. And we wanted to move to an HTML5 reporting format that would allow us to deliver things on any device, including devices that don't accept Flash. And so a lot of it was about improving the general look and feel, but a lot of it was about making sure that all of the reports and graphics that we deliver can go to any mobile device. So that's pretty much an overview of some of our more recent news, Rich. With that, I will turn it over to any Q&A that you might have.
Sure. Thanks for that, Tom. Kind of a general question about UPS systems. Are there like rules of thumb as far as how much UPS you need for, like, say, a megawatt per megawatt, or for per $1 million of rack server spend? Are there rules like that?
In terms of the dollar cost, or in terms of sizing for total megawatt?
Either or. I was just curious.
Yeah, what I would say is that what you typically try to do is you look at the total load that's actually being drawn from servers and routers and storage in the data center, and that's fairly easily quantified. So a data center, when they go to commission it and build it, they'll look at it and they'll say, okay, we're going to create a data center that's capable of supporting 6 megawatts. And then it's really up to the data center operator as to whether or not they want to sort of put in extra headroom. Is that data center operator going to sell 4 megawatts? Are they going to sell 5 megawatts? And in some cases, believe it or not, they will actually oversell it on the theory that that customers aren't necessarily going to use it all. Similar to airlines kind of overbooking seats on an aircraft. So the amount of kind of headroom that gets spec'd in is really up to the data center operator. But what I would say is, once they decide how much physical plant to put in there, that is really what they do with the UPS systems. And a couple other comments there is, so if you're going to put in 6 megawatts versus worth of usable output from a UPS system, with newer generation technologies like Toshiba, you actually don't need to overspec, whereas with legacy systems, you tend to need to overspec. And then, they oftentimes will actually overspec on the generator side. So, if you've got, 6 megawatts of usable output with UPS systems, they might put in 7 or 8 megawatts of diesel generator capacity just to make sure that there's enough to, support the load if the UPS systems, go beyond their 5 to 10 minute battery life. So, I don't know if that's a helpful answer or not,
Yeah.
but I guess what I would say is, customers and data center operators have a lot of choices with respect to sizing the load at both the UPS level and the diesel generator level, and it's kind of up to their risk tolerance and business policies as to how much headroom they put in.
Yeah, I would think their planned service levels all come to play there. I wanted to ask you, Tom, about smart grids. You mentioned PG&E as a customer. Do you guys have a role to play there as well?
I believe that we do. So currently for PG&E, we're not in the smart grid part of what they're doing, but as I sort of mentioned on the opportunity slide, there's a ton of applications where stored energy is required. Mm-hmm. And in all aspects of smart grids, whether it's, shifting load from one geography to another, or whether it's exploiting new technologies like solar or wind farms, all of those new technologies typically have a stored energy component that's, got battery backup associated with it. And our technology is applicable to all of that. So, it's there's a huge number of opportunities, and interestingly, the types of batteries that you use in those different applications are often very different. So, for UPS batteries, they may take minor hits from time to time, in countries where there's a high quality power grid. But in situations like wind farm and solar, you're actually using batteries that are designed to, cycle, discharge, and recharge actually, every single day. And so, actually you need to use different battery chemistries and different types of batteries. And, the one constant is you never want a bad battery. And in fact, our monitoring technology is applicable really to any type of battery from a design characteristic and chemistry type.
Well, great. Well, Tom, kind of a wrap-up question here. I wanted to know about your analytics and what you're learning. It would seem that, monitoring these things on a regular basis, you might know more about these batteries and how they operate than the manufacturer. And are you sharing that information?
That's a very good question. And as a matter of fact, one of our largest battery vendor partners actually does pay us to get sanitized access to our data because they don't necessarily see all that stuff. Obviously, any battery vendor can see their warranty claims,
sure,
but they don't necessarily see all the data on a day-to-day basis as to exactly what happened with that battery. And, for our database, 4 times a day, we're taking an impedance measurement, taking a voltage measurement, we're taking a temperature measurement at the negative battery post, which is the IEEE standard. We're looking at float voltages. We're looking at all kinds of things. And typically a battery vendor doesn't have access to that. And, what I would say is the smarter industry-leading battery vendors actually do want to see that data because they want to correlate it with their warranty claims and failure analysis and see how different batteries are performing. So, I guess the short answer to your question is yes, battery vendors are very interested in that data.
Yeah. Well, Tom Barton, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today.
All right, Rich, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of big data.